All right, here we are in Georgia, that great state, again, of so many artifacts, so many interesting places, and certainly interesting people. The gentleman standing beside me needs no introduction to you, Dr. Joseph Mahan of Isaac, which you're very familiar with, author of The Sun Kings, The Secret, and many wonderful works. It so happens that we're located at a wonderful college here today, a stone he's going to share with you. But I'm going to let him explain, but I think he even spent a few days here at this Institute of Learning himself. Dr. Mahan, so good.
Good.
To have
Thank
me with
you.
you again.
I spent more than a few days here. I went to school for 2 years when it was a junior college, and I worked here for 3 years later when I was director of public relations and taught things like journalism and an occasional history course. That was, again, more than 45 years ago. But during that time, this stone was brought to the campus. Now, it is, so far as I have been able to find out, the best single example of a type of inscribed stone that is perhaps, or rather, perhaps collectively, the biggest mystery that relates to, and as it yet is unsolved, as relates to the study of ancient cultures. It so happens that this one was brought to the campus from about 10 miles away because the Vandals were about to destroy it, it was felt. Interestingly enough, looking for gold, because always these things seem to be associated with gold mines, or where gold or copper is found. Now, I have in my hand a copy of Aesop, which is the Epigraphic Society occasional publications edited by Barry Fell. This is volume 17, printed in 1988, and in it is a color picture of this stone and an article by Ronald W.B. Morris of Scotland, who was the world's authority on what he called cup and ring stones. And you can see very well why he called them cups and rings. The characteristic feature of them are these depressed cups surrounded by a number of rings and occasionally a spiral. This one happens to have a spiral on it as well as the rings. Mr. Morris had spent a lifetime studying these in the British Isles, and particularly in Scotland, where they are found in Argyll on the west coast, and at a couple of other sites, and one site over on the east coast of Scotland. In each case, he says, each example, of which there are several hundred in the British Isles, are within 6 miles of a known mine of either gold or copper, and has been associated, that have been worked or are known to exist. The same thing may be true as well here in North America. Certainly this one was in the midst of what we know were gold deposits, and we know that placer mining went on in the river that was right underneath where this stone came from, the top of a hill. Good examples, according to Mr. Morris's article in this issue of Aesop, are to be found in all the continents except Australia. And at that time, 7 years ago now, none had been found in Australia. We now know that the ancient Egyptians were in Australia, and it has been very dramatically demonstrated within the past year with the big discoveries in New South Wales of large cliff sides covered with hieroglyphs, and particular mentions of the time of Khufu, some 2600 BC. What I'm saying is this is contemporary with this type of stone and these particular types of stone carvings. We know that very well because Professor Morris in his article has shown that they are found in certain types of stone cyst burials, what in North America we call stone box burials where slabs are, 4 or 6 slabs are put together to make a crypt, and the body was buried in it. Inside some of these, on the inner surfaces, are these some of the cup and ring marks, and in the famous tomb under the mound at Newgrange in Ireland, it was certainly, that one has been rather authoritatively dated to something before 3000 BC. And in the stones worked into that one, on the back surface covered with dirt that could not have been done later, are the sections of a stone similar to this one, which means that they were certainly being done as early as 3000 BC, and they were being done, he thought, as late as 1800 BC, dating material with it in the British Isles. It's rather interesting that we're in this building where for several years Professor B.C. Yates taught American history, and Mr. Yates had a particular interest in these stones and the few others that are found throughout North Georgia. So he became a good friend of Professor Randall Morris and took pictures of these stones and descriptions of them to Scotland and spent some time touring around visiting the stones over there. And they both agreed that this stone could turn up in Scotland and it would not have disturbed Professor Morse at all. There were certain types of stones, however, that were found in Scotland that would have disturbed Mr. Yates and Mr. Morris, because there were certain differences that appear there that don't appear on these stones. However, this stone has a combination and more different types of symbols than are known anywhere in Scotland and apparently anywhere else. That is why I said in the beginning that it might be the most comprehensive of any of these, and maybe the most significant. The differences that Mr. Morris and Mr. Yates discussed and would have found was the fact that on many of the Scottish ones, taking this figure, for instance, there would be a straight line down, invariably downward, and a break in the spirals, if you've got it. And one or two examples exist, I think, in North America of that. But then there were the ones they called the keystone, where there are two lines and a fairly broad keyhole, rather, and a fairly broad gap in the stones. And those apparently only appear in Scotland. Now, to say that they don't appear anywhere else is a little risky, for the simple fact that the reason they are known to appear in Scotland was Professor Randall Morris himself. No other area of the world has been so thoroughly studied for these things. We have some examples in North America, people of the same sort. Some of us are prone to think that there's more ancient writing on the Arkansas River and on the Cimarron and in certain parts of Oklahoma and Colorado and New Mexico than anywhere else. Well, I'm not quite sure that's true. The reason that we know more about them is the fact that somebody named Gloria Farley spent the kind of years studying them that Mr. Morris spent studying these cup and ring stones and recorded them. And more recently, Dr. Arnold Murray has been doing the same thing. And there's a lot of ancient writing in New Mexico because one is in the sparsely populated areas and arid areas out there. There haven't been too many people around to disturb them. There's not enough vegetation to hide them very well, so they're easily seen, and Arnold Murray's been working on them. So that's the same thing applies to the situation in Scotland, I think, and to a degree in North Georgia. There are people here like Jack Richardson, who is present with us today, lives in this immediate area, and are out actively looking for them, and we do know of some others. I think there are a couple of interesting things about this that are significant. One is, as I've said, that common legend among the inhabitants here who are much associated with and overlapped with the Cherokees, and many of them are of Cherokee descent themselves, have just an unfailing story that these things are associated with gold. and it's come down to being hidden gold, perhaps instead of mining gold, but gold nonetheless. And I think that is significant. They do have something to do with that era. We are within a few miles of a site on the Etowah River that was a rather large site, which was excavated back in 1949 by the University of Georgia and the Smithsonian, in which there are undoubted relationships of pottery and on the earliest levels and other indications to cultures from Mesopotamia, even as far back as Sumeria itself. On the Chattahoochee River in the west part of this state, there was conveniently found in 1964 a small lead tablet on which were inscribed in cuneiform letters an inscription in the Sumerian cuneiform, which is a receipt for gifts rather, to the goddess Enlil of sheep. And this thing, for several reasons, we've shown certainly was cast on the site where it was found in West Georgia. But on it is a date, the 38th year of the reign of Shulgi. And Shulgi was the second of the kings of the third dynasty of Ur. And taking the 38th year of his reign was the year 2040 BC. So this shows clearly that at the time we think these things were carved, people were undoubtedly over here working and looking for metals, both the Egyptians probably and the people from ancient Sumer as well. So I feel that there's a key somewhere that these things will be deciphered. They may have astronomical connections. They may simply be the relationship of the revolution of certain planets to others. I'm not sure what the circles and spirals. This one is not as clear as it was when it was brought here more than 45 years ago. It was out on the campus, and certainly to the great credit of the thousands of students who have been on this campus since 1948. It was put out right in a very wide open spot, and said to be clearly important. But everybody had the confidence no Reinhardt student was ever going to carve initials or anything on it. And if you will examine carefully, they've sat on it, they've made pictures of it, and all sorts of other things. I guess they've even had picnics on it. Alumni come and look at it, and no damage. Except we took a photograph one time about 5 years ago that was made the day it was put down over here, and compared it with the way it looked at that time, and it was perfectly clear that the automobiles driving around here and the acid rain had certainly taken its toll on the stone. And you have to look closely to see some of the features that I do remember existed on it. This one, of course, one of them has a cross, an equilateral cross, or maybe two. I think there's one right near that end there, inside the circle. And of course, that is a well-known symbol from the Mediterranean that also relates to the Indian cultures, even down to the present time. There's believed a footprint, a human footprint, near the top here. And this is a possibility here, but this one is the one that might be a heel and toe print where somebody was running. There are human footprints on many of these, and on one ring stone near here, there are, four, I believe, footprints in all carved on it. So that is basically the story of this stone. It was moved in here into the foyer of the Freeman Library here on the Reinhardt campus for protection. And the protection is against the acid rain. You can see the lichen and all that grew on it through the years. But it is not an isolated case. It's an extremely good example of a clearly, mutually understood system of symbols that were used by the same people who were traveling on the major continents of the world, and who left these things as we now know, usually in association where areas where either copper or gold was being mined, and that this was certainly earlier than 3000 BC, and was occurring in Britain, and in Britain at least, as late as around 1800 BC, which was about the time of the climax of the building at Stonehenge. We can gather one or two other things with, I think, a good deal of positive assurance, and that is that it is not alphabetic in the sense of alphabetic letters, even though it's very likely that the people who carved it were literate and did use one of the world's alphabets, but that it is of a scientific nature, which once understood, it may tell a great deal. The one near here on Shoal Creek, some 5 miles away, it has a perfect square in which are 9 of the circles, 3 in 3 rows, and one, I believe, in a smaller square to the right, which a certain member of Isaac, Paul Chapman, has proceeded to measure and do some of his computations, and decides that that thing illustrates the value of pi, that the 3 and something of the third relates to the 9 and 3 figure. Be that as it may, this is an interesting thing, and I'm, for one, am glad it's on the Reinhardt campus, because I had the unusual honor of escorting it here. When I worked for the college, it was given to us by Mrs. Pierce Klein, who owned the property on which it rested, and she had become disturbed because on the top of this little mountain, there had been others of these, and one very close to this one that had recently been blasted by the gold hunters, who couldn't move it, so they decided to blow it out of the way and get at whatever was under it. They had slipped this one down the mountainside some 6 feet and had dug holes under where it was as well. She offered it to the college if we would get it moved here, and it's moved here and here. So that is the sum in total, I think, of my knowledge concerning the stone.
Dr. Mahan, many people might wonder, why would a college in 1995 want an old stone like this on campus with these old markings? I'm sure some people are going to wonder that. What would you answer?
Well, one is, I think this is one of the colleges that do what colleges should do. They inquire into things, why it is. What is this stone? Second thing is, it was here, and certainly there were people associated with the college appreciative enough to see that it didn't damage any further. And I think it may make students ask questions as well. I mean, and I hope it's one of them one day who will unravel taking the knowledge that's being built up about Stone Age cultures and unravel it perhaps even.
An inquisitive mind is what education is about.
Is about, exactly.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Well, thank you for being here.
It seems to me impossible that in different continents they would have had exactly this same pattern unless there must have been some kind of contact. How would you explain any other way? So this shows that people traveled around and took this idea with them, and it must have been a powerful idea.
That is exactly the conclusion that we've drawn, of course. And we do know, of course, that there were boats and that these people were navigating widely throughout the oceans.
We're not absolutely sure that at 3000 BC this could have been that common to travel across seas, but certainly towards the later side of the 1800s there must have been much more contact.
Well, this might have been as late as 1800 BC here.
But do you say that they were discontinued it after that? This pattern?
That is the latest Professor Morris could find positive dating evidence, combined with the archaeology in the British Isles and all. he felt 1800 was the latest date he could associate them with.
Yes, all right, there, what about the New World? What
Well,
is-
here in the New World, we have not actually tied them to any existing archaeology. Knowingly, it would fall, of course, in what we call the Archaic period here. And we know that this was characterized by things like stone vessels and certain types of spears and what we presume to be of primarily hunting and gathering culture. But we also know, interestingly enough, that these people at least worked copper, because in the barrels of some of these that have been found in caves, there are copper gorgets and copper, other pieces of worked copper with them.
Copper I can imagine, but gold, I'm not sure that, you said there were 6 miles from here, there was...
They're gold mines.
Gold mines, but
Yeah.
were they mined at that time?
Well, some in Britain were, and these we don't know.
I doubt it, because we don't know that the Cherokees had gold ornaments, did they?
We know there's a great deal that we don't know about Cherokees, and with all due respect, I expect a great deal more that European and other scientists probably don't know, because new information is coming out. And of course, as you know, our institute is involved in just that. And we do now know that we have a gold mine near here that is of a completely different type from anything that's been known before. And it's a very complicated, beautifully carved right directly in tunnel, right directly into the formation of gneiss, which is a soft granite for 120 feet. And it had followed a gold vein that was worked out and had been completely hidden. We only found it right.
So all I can say is that the last word has not been said on this. All the students here should really make an investigation. I'm sure they can help to crack this
Yeah.
very, very difficult problem.
Thank you very much, and that's our hope. That's exactly what.
Thank you.
I'd like to add too that within the city limits of Canton, that there was once a copper mine. It wasn't very profitable and didn't last very long, but there was a copper mine within 6 miles of this stone,
This is something I did not know.
as well as the gold mines that were running the belt, in the iron belt, through this part of the country.
If I may, just 1 second, I want to point out this particular circle with a cross in it, and this is used by many people. For example, and this far outdates what the American Indian used this for. If there were to be a circle in each one of these, it would mean everything was divided equally. In Hebrew, this is if we were to use the ancient alphabet, this is a tet, or a T, as we would say. But we know on this stone that it has a diverse meaning. But this is the cross we were talking about a moment ago. I think the various signs, and I think this stone has not yet begun to be explored as far as some of the details that we find here, as Dr. Mahan has so aptly brought forth. And I dare say that inasmuch as this is brought into a college, a university, where young people see it, that it causes minds to know there's a reason, and there's a logical reason. And God bless them in their endeavors. I think they'll come up.
Now, I'd like
with
to
the
put in
answer.
a plug as well, Dr. Murray, for the University of Georgia. They have a smaller, 2 stones that are smaller than this one that they also have taken under their protection and to study. And they're on the campus in Athens, and they came from Forsyth County, near here, and they have some of the cupping rings and additional symbols like these, but they are not neither of them is as complicated as this particular design, but they were clearly done by the same people. And there are a great many of them in northern Alabama, and a couple of others in Georgia, and some in Track Rock Gap up near the Tennessee, the North Carolina line. So hopefully somebody will take up the study of them seriously.
You pointed out the Hebrew origin, but I can tell you for sure that a cross inside a circle is a hieroglyph, Egyptian hieroglyph, meaning city.
City.
And the statue of Ramses III that I discovered in Mexico has 3 such symbols over his head. And
yes,
that
that's
means
right,
the
yeah.
special city, not just any city, the city that lies in the underworld. And that was the whole reason why they came to the Americas looking for the underworld. But that story I will tell you when I make my video.
Good.
All right, now I wish to tell you quickly, since you were using your film, what I know about the circle and the cross in it. This is a very ancient symbol. I said it related to the Indian and North American religions, and I don't make the same distinction against us and them, Indians and other people, that you make, because the American Indian is as cosmopolitan a people as the American people have ever been.
Yes.
Their ancestors came from everywhere, and they had all sorts of. But among the oldest of them are the Yuchis. I mean, as far as a group identified. They do come, at least they were in Central Asia, and as we know, they played a very important role in the Confederation here in North America. At their king's ground, which is the religious ground that they still maintain very carefully, is kept the sacred fire, which supposedly was given to them in the beginning. Certainly it's the combination of the sun and the moon. It has all the sacred meanings associated with it that the entire religion involves. It identifies them everywhere they went, just as I think it identified the Egyptian city that bore this symbol. And it has come to mean city in Egyptian hieroglyphs. But it is laid out on the middle of the west square. The sacred ground is 2 squares side by side. It is approximately 10 feet in diameter. It is covered with white sand. It's a white background. Then 4 logs, carefully dressed and prepared to just fit within the white square, are brought in under ceremonies by young men who place them very carefully, pointing in each of the 4 directions. The sacred fire is kindled from flint at the center of them. And this is, of course, the fire that represents the sun, which they're supposed to keep the knowledge of and be able to provide at the time the sun goes out, whenever that is, or whatever it means. That's been their ancient teachings. So that's why I suspect that to be very ancient, and I feel like that originally, however it may have got adapted in other cultures, originally it identified this fire in the central element of the religion. Reinhardt College is located at Waleska, Georgia. There's been a great deal of fun cast during the time when people said, "Oh, I thought you said Alaska." They had hard trouble finding it. It is secure in the foothills of the Georgia Blue Ridge. It was pretty inaccessible until very recent times. I went to school here beginning in the fall of 1939 as a freshman, and at that time there was not a paved road nearer than 7 miles. And you went through over a mountain in one direction and through a mountain gap in the other. And there was a time during that school year in which I stayed up here 2 weeks when we were snowed in and we were not able to go out in any direction. So there's not been a great deal maybe to disturb students, but there have been remarkable accomplishments by Reinhardt students. There have been Rhodes Scholars, there have been famous ministers, there have been educators, there have been scientists. One who helped first split the atom was a graduate, Eugene Booth was a graduate of this school. It prides itself, the administration and the alumni, I think, on the fact that it is a religious school. It does attempt to teach and observe the basic tenets of the Christian religion without denomination and without emphasis upon dogma. If Waleska was remote in 1939, you can imagine how remote it was in 1883 when one Augustus Michael Reinhardt, who had established himself as a lawyer with a certain amount of financial success in the post-Civil War city of Atlanta, decided that there should be in the community where he grew up a school to educate the boys and girls of this area. And the whole concept from the beginning was coeducational. There were girls and boys from the beginning. He went that year to the Methodist Conference meeting at Dalton and made a proposition to them that he would provide a site and a building with the cooperation of his brother-in-law, who actually owned the property we're on right now, whose name was Sharp, John Sharp, and that they would provide these and pay the salaries if the conference would send them a competent minister to organize this school. So he came in the due course, and they started in 1884 giving classes in what they called the Swayback School. It was a Palmer cabinet shop that they rented on the street running south from here, and the top had somewhat given way, and it had a sway in the middle, so it was called the Swayback building. Very soon, however, they began building a classroom building, and they were aided along, they said, by divine providence. In March that year, there came a major tornado which blew down many of the large pine trees to the west of here and south on property. So people gladly gave their trees to be sawed to make the timber to build the original building, which served as a classroom building and as an administration building for a few years. It was a military school from about 1898 until the time of the First World War, and they had a right impressive group of cadets at times. They wore a military uniform based on the United States uniforms, and for a while they had an interesting commandant of this unit, who was John W. West. This was the man who was later president of North Georgia College and was a history professor, and who started the museum at Jonesboro with the material from 1850 that eventually turned up at Westville, which is named for him, which is the Living History Museum at Lumpkin, where you visited. Anyway, the military unit never was actually called into combat anywhere, but every year here, for several years, they put on a spectacular sham battle on these hills, and they rehearsed them for months ahead of time, and they had a red team and a white team, or a blue team and a red team, and they would take certain hills and charge across certain of these ravines here on the campus, and they drew great crowds of people. These became firing their 1870 Springfield rifles, the barrels of some of which make the balusters in the steps to the Dobbs building, which is the stone building near here. The end of First World War and the change of many things and the growth of state colleges brought Reinhardt near extinction in the early 20s, and there was a lively debate in the Methodist Church as to whether they shouldn't just close down Reinhardt and one or two others of their smaller schools and put the money on where it would do some good, like at Emory University and other places of this sort. It so happened that one Atlanta man, an industrialist, who was completely imbued with the value of education, heard one of these debates at a meeting of the Methodist Conference and decided that it was just almost sacrilegious. It was just ridiculous to be talking about closing a school that the Methodist Church supposedly supported and had given as much as it had in the way of leadership. So he drove his automobile over the rough roads up here to take a look, and was so impressed that he paid the deficit personally of the college from 1924 until about 1950. It so happens that this was Samuel Candler Dobbs, who was one of the original 5 owners of the Coca-Cola Company. He was a nephew of Asa Candler and of Bishop Warren G. Candler. And the Dobbs building in front of us here was a personal gift from Dr. Dobbs, one of the first things he did for the college. But he was one of several people that we point to and say they made the difference. They kept the college going. I'm going to tell one more story that is sort of in the family and might not be might not should be told, but once I was public relations director of the school, and I did learn some things. But you ate lunch today in the rather handsome Gordy Center. You, Professor Gerard's boy last night spent the night in the Gordy residence, which is now the guest house on the campus. And you saw a very large dormitory building that was the Herbert Gordy, the Gordy family, in other words, a gift from them. So you are inclined to ask who was or who were the Gordys, who seem to have been very important in this connection. This begins with Frank Gordy. As far off as some of you are, you had never heard of the Varsities. But here in Georgia, they are famous and were the earliest drive-ins and short order restaurants, one in Atlanta adjacent to Georgia Tech, and one in Athens across Broad Street from the main entrance of the University of Georgia. Frank Gordy started those two. They had one principle, and that was they served the very best of everything. He paid 1 cent on bread and others to make it high quality. He had left Reinhardt under somewhat unpleasant circumstances in that he had run afoul of one of the rules he had been expelled. So in my day, it was an effort to interest Mr. Gordy in returning to the campus. But it so happened his wife was also a graduate, as I think somebody told you earlier, and his mother had worked for the college in earlier times. So pretty soon he was back in the fold, and so we do a great deal of respect and honor to the Gordys. At that time, of course, another effort was made to broaden the services. Now, you look around you and you see trees, and if you study these trees, you see these are trees pretty carefully selected and placed with the idea that some of them are going to turn certain colors appeared in the year, and some others are going to bloom at another time, and they're going to provide shade. And there was a president of the college with whom I worked when I was here in the 1940s, who came in 1944 and stayed over 30 years as president. One of his big activities was to plant trees and shrubs, and with the idea of making this one of the most beautiful campuses in the state, and I think he did. But all things like this don't sometimes just happen. They are the work and efforts of individuals. So Reinhardt College is the result of the effort of many people. In more recent times, they have now begun a program of expanding the program and the teaching and all off campus. And they have 2 off-campus centers, one of them in North Atlanta. And they are emphasizing, as you have seen, technology and the forefront in business and other things. Thank you.
You know, Dr. Mahan, thanks for having us. Does this not prove that men have been communicating for years?
It does indeed, yes.
It's just that we have to renew our codes occasionally to find out what did this person have in their minds. Thanks for being our host in Georgia again. It's always a pleasure. Well, I hope that people reading your great work on Sun Kings and The Secret, I know they'll be real pleased with it.
Well, I'm going to put a plug in at this point. I am abandoning a whole lot of other activities, and I'm writing a book that I have wanted to write for a while. The title of this book is Presumption of Fraud. Venerable Shield of the American Archaeological Establishment. And I'm taking all these various finds, beginning with James Adair in 1742, that have had ancient writings and ancient symbols on them that have supposedly been faked by somebody wanting to fool the establishment. And of course it's absurd because they've all now been read and put into proper historic context. And that's what I intend to do while I'm still able to do so.
Please keep us informed. We'll be looking forward to that.
I don't think it'll be very popular, but it's going to at least be read.
That's what makes a book good, does it not? When it's informative and it isn't just a carbon copy of
Well,
others.
and people have just never taken the time to put all these things together.
We'll be looking forward to that, sir.
Thank you.
I certainly count this a privilege to be asked to appear on this program and say a word about Reinhardt College. I must first draw some reference to this program. Those of us in higher education today are keenly aware that seemingly even among older people, as well as college students, we have somehow forgotten the impact that the past has on where we are today and certainly the future. The relationship between what has happened to mankind through the many years of our development as human beings and where we are today certainly will have a great impact on where we are tomorrow. So it is a privilege for me not only to say something about Reinhardt, but to be on this program and to be able to share in the thrust of what is being said to you today concerning where we have come as a civilization and the impact that that might have on where we will go in the future. Reinhardt College has a long history. We've been right where we are today, located in a small mountainous type town north of Atlanta, Georgia. We've been here for 112 years. We were founded by the Methodist Church, and we were founded on the principle that there was a connection in God's plan for the people on this earth between vital piety and knowledge. You know, the Methodist Church was actually born in a university. So we have always sought that truth that comes to us from knowing. The Methodist Church still today makes a tremendous investment in higher education with 122 different institutions, ranging in size from tens of thousands of students down to small places like Reinhardt College, a place of about 1,000 students who are pursuing primarily liberal arts education. We believe that if we've ever needed among the life and teachings that go on college campuses, the principles that are a part of the New Testament and what we know as the Christian message or the good news, it is on college campuses today. With what is happening with the public sector and with all of the discussion on the separation of church and state, makes it even more critical, we believe, to have places like Reinhardt College. We've weathered all the world wars. As I was speaking the other day with a person, he said, "Floyd, do you realize that before there was an Interstate 75, before there was a Georgia Tech, before there was a Coca-Cola, there was a Reinhardt College?" Because two lawyers who grew up in this area and then went down to Atlanta after the Civil War decided that the people in this area needed an education. This was before the impact of public education. So this little school has a history of being involved in what it is that makes up the formal training that we generally call education in the United States of America. It's interesting for me to know the relationship between public and private in that area. As a matter of fact, we had a public high school here as late as 1956. Right on this campus. I was talking to a person the other day concerning the local gymnasium at the local elementary school. We're fixing to build a brand new one. But he was saying, it was the people of the area that decided we wanted us a gymnasium, so we all got out and we built one. That would be almost impossible today with the emphasis on the separation of public and private dollars. But we feel like at Reinhardt that we have a very special place. This is a very special school. And I guess in a lot of ways, until very recently when we started using a rather controversial member of the House of Representatives to teach a course here, we were known as the best kept secret in Georgia. I one time said to a person who said that to me, "What do you mean?" And they just simply said, "I wish more people knew what goes on at Reinhardt College. You teach math, you teach arithmetic, you teach a person how to read and write. You take people where they are and try to move them along the educational path. But more important than that, you try to emphasize the moral and ethical training that should be a part of every educational experience." We feel like that's true at Reinhardt College. We have a very active board of trustees. We have a very active group of alums who've been here. I can honestly say to you that being president of this school is almost like having Christmas every day, because somebody is calling me and saying, you know, we want to help you do today and tomorrow what Reinhardt has become known for in the way of higher education. I just yesterday had a person who has been a friend of this college and a member of our board for many years come in and say, Floyd, I want to help two kinds of students. I want to give you a $100,000 piece of money to place in the endowment of the college to help an outstanding student, because I want to see Reinhardt continue to attract outstanding students. I want to give you another $100,000 piece of money, and I would like for you to give that to people who are not outstanding students. Maybe they're C students, but I want you to take that and base it on need. And I said to him, you know, you're hitting right at the heart of what makes this institution what it is. You're saying, I want Reinhardt to be a credible, when it comes to the Academy of Higher Education institution, and have high-quality students here. But I want you to continue to attract those students who have a need, particularly a financial need. Some of them have educational needs. Maybe they didn't do as well in high school as they should have. Time and time again, when I go into Atlanta, I'll have a lawyer or a doctor or someone come up to me and will say to me, if it wasn't for Reinhardt, I would not have been given my start. All of my children have gone to Reinhardt. And I'm, of course, like every other parent, proud of those people today. As a matter of fact, my oldest child, who is an MD, is visiting us this coming weekend. She started at Reinhardt. So many people have. I hope that when a student comes here, that we're dedicated, every faculty member and every staff member, to the proposition that says that God made you, He made you for a purpose. Your job while you're at Reinhardt College is to determine what that purpose is and get on with the business. We also try to say, and try to remember this, there is no free lunch. This is an opportunistic society. America is what it is today because people have been given an opportunity to be what they are. It's not other people's responsibility for your behavior. You are responsible for your behavior. I talked once to the president of the University of Georgia, and he said, Floyd, why don't we have any more problems than we do with Reinhardt students? All of your students seem to come here and do well with us. And I said to him, because we emphasize not only the reading, writing, and arithmetic, but we say it's important how you live your life. So yes, I count it a privilege today on this program when you people are reflecting on where we have been, trying to judge where we are today, and trying to help us project where we might be in the future as a people and as a country. I count it a privilege to be a part of this program and to say a word about Reinhardt College. I honestly believe if we've ever needed the Reinhardts in the field of higher education, we need them today. I thank you.
We met a gentleman, Dr. Joseph Mahan. Dr. Mahan, his work, one of the bright spots of his work, the Metcalf Stone. He'll be telling you that. He has worked with Indian people all over this world, you might say, at least spanning from Iran, the Middle East, Near East, even into this great nation. The title of this documentary, we chose Hunter, for there was a chief that on discussing and talking with Dr. Mahan, gave him an Indian name, Katahele, which is to say, hunter. Now, many of you would say, hunter? Like a hunter of animals? No, considerably a deeper meaning, considerably a more depth to that thought, a hunter for truth. And is that not what really all we that enjoy studying deeper, even into the Father's Word or into a documentary such as this, to document fact and even to document fiction? But you're going to see a lot of fact here, and I want to thank Dr. Mahan personally for the fact that with his organization, we're able to meet many new people. The stones of this nation speak. The stones of the hills speak if you'll listen, if you'll search, if you'll seek. So, Katahele, the hunter of truth.
One of these gorgets has written across the middle of it a line of intelligible writing using the Libyan alphabet from North Africa in a form used roughly in the 5th or 6th century, or a little earlier, BC.
And the last was Muscovy.
You have just heard Chief Samuel W. Brown, Jr. explain some of the things that I am going to discuss today, and I hope that with his introduction of them and my explanation that you will know a great deal more about several very important subjects relating to the American Indians than you know now.
I hope you've enjoyed this documentary. It is with great regret, and yet is that not what we all work forward to? Katahele, hunter, a man that doesn't hunt for gain, but hunts for truth. That chief would pass this on and give this man, Dr. Joseph Mahan, a professor that has taken pre-Columbian history and done a great deal with it, inasmuch as having founded the Institute of Studies of Preserving American Culture. I myself being a fellow, holding credentials as a fellow of that, and that being an honor. Passed away since we put this documentary together. It passed away this month, and is now with our Father. And certainly, he is in that place where truth abounds, that is to say, with our Father. It has been a pleasure working with him as he has done many one-hour programs with us. How precious to have done those two houses, famous houses with a lot of Southern history, dating back even to the Civil War, introducing yours truly to many wonderful, wonderful people that actually lived in part in some of those times, but famous mounds taking us there, showing us, teaching us. He will sorely be missed by the Isaac Association as well as by the Shepherd's Chapel, for he was always hunting, yes, hunting for truth. That's what we do as well. We hunt for that truth in God's Word, the migrations of our people, and that truth is what gives us a foundation on which we can stand being sure also of ourselves. This builds character, in a sense, when you can be sure of yourself. And I know Isaac will continue on this study for the advancement of our heritage and our culture, documenting that there were people here before Columbus discovered America. Dr. Mahan, in his work as the author of the book The Secret and The Sun Kings, what a noble work he has done for our brothers that were here long before many others were. And the truth as to their crossing themselves and coming here. What a fascinating work and what a fascinating addition that he has in those two works alone, not to mention his other works, in establishing how important to American young people our cultures, our heritage, always hunting for that truth, knowing it's going to be just around the next bend, that truth that we need, that truth that we seek. But the important thing is that we never stop looking or searching for that truth. He has found that truth. He was a wonderful friend. Thank you.